Hello, Mini Air Show 6. It is Saturday the 16th and I've got a session this morning to talk about getting the best help and advice. It's one of those things that is quite close to my heart. I spend a lot of time helping people, email, YouTube, lots of content creators do. And there are very much good questions that it's easy to add value and help those pilots and builders with very quickly. And there's also really bad questions that are a lot harder to cope with. Now, there's that old adage that there's no such thing as a dumb question. And that is absolutely true. But there are lazy and rude ones. And those kind of questions don't tend to elicit the same kind of helpful responses as ones that have a little bit more thought put into them. So what I want to do in this half hour is give you some tips and tricks really. Later on today, there is another session talking about the detail of troubleshooting. And troubleshooting is a little bit of a lost art because troubleshooting relies on you breaking down a system into individual pieces and then being able to test each of those individual pieces until you find the part that is actually causing the problem. The trouble with troubleshooting, that's not too many troubles, is that the symptom that you observe in whatever it is you're building or trying to repair is not the same as the problem. The problem could be over here, but the symptom could be somewhere else. So for example, the problem could be that the solder joint has cracked on the signal output on your flight controller. The symptom is that that's the one that's plugged into your motor and the motor doesn't behave very well and your ESC is making weird beeping noises. So being able to kind of work your way through those individual pieces is a bit of an art, particularly in the modern age where we're using devices like tablets and Apple devices where the operating system and the complexity is very cleverly hidden away. You just work with a graphical user interface, and if it doesn't work, most times these days the answer, as it's always been to be fair, has been turn it off and turn it on again. And most of the time that will clear the issue. It doesn't, however, clear a problem if you have something like a cracked solder joint on a flight controller. Unplugging and replugging the battery in isn't going to clear those issues. So that troubleshooting session is later today, and if you're interested in that, go and have a look at it. Troubleshooting is exactly the same process whether you're trying to start, a 20-year-old truck or whether it's trying to troubleshoot why one of the motors isn't turning or jittering on your brand new quadcopter build that you're doing while you're stuck indoors. Now it's very fun to be able to speak to you like this. Normally I will be down in a field, I think probably we all would, at the Mini Air Show. I've been to the Mini Air Show 5 and 4. Big thank you to Andrew and the team for organising it, Fraser and everybody else for getting involved and putting this virtual meetup together. For me, a big part of this hobby is this whole community aspect. While it is an awful lot of fun to go in the middle of nowhere and to fly around and see the world from a very different perspective thanks to FPV, bumping into people at shows and talking is brilliant. You learn so much stuff by talking to other people with other experiences. And it's also a great opportunity to catch up with somebody that you probably haven't seen since last time you were at that show. I tend to only go to 2 or 3 shows a year. This is one of them. Things like Western Park is another one. That doesn't look like it's happening this year, which is heartbreaking. But in the current situation with the virus, we've all got to make the smart choices. So at least we can meet up virtually and have a nice chat. Now, I've taken full advantage of the fact that I've been stuck in for the past 7 weeks to catch up on a lot of projects. This is the latest one that I'm currently doing, and this is one that I've been doing on the YouTube channel and asking people what they want to see. This is a right-wing mini drac with an F405 flight controller. It's actually got the DJI HD system at the front, and it's something that I bought back in summer 2018. Started to put it together, and it's one of those projects that I just lost interest in, and it languished in the back of the garage until I was rooting around for something 3-4 weeks ago and actually found some flight controllers, some VTXs and a couple of airframes, including the mini drag that I hadn't built. And it's been so long since I've been out and flown. It's been so long since I've made anything. I thought, you know what, I just need to scratch that itch. If you're a builder like me, and part of the fun for you in the hobby is actually making the model, then you'll understand where I'm coming from. So I've had a wonderful time. Hopefully I'll be able to get out safely and to maiden this. I'm going to need quite a big open space is the challenge that I've got. And obviously I don't want to be traveling non-essentially until it's okay to do that. So if you're interested in all that stuff, check out the YouTube video where I'm putting that all together. Couple of things before I get into my slides for this morning. Request if you can help somebody that you see in a forum or a YouTube comment or whatever it is that's asking for help, and you can help them, you've either had experience of that or have some really constructive, helpful tips, then please leave those comments. An awful lot of people that I know are reluctant to do that because of the behavior of some people in places like the forums, where I know it used to happen to me. Somebody would leave a question. It used to be back in the day, you can't really see it, that's the tail of my T-Rex 500. If you remember those things, it's got full aluminium upgrades on it. It's a beautiful helicopter. I don't fly helis anymore, but it's just such an awesome thing, I can't get rid of it. But back in the day, lots of people were asking questions about how to set up the gear mesh, how to do swash mixing, how to do the throws for the different pitches on the blades. And I spent a lot of time watching videos. This is kind of pre-YouTube days, that's how long ago it was. And in the forums, people would ask questions and I would kind of then try and answer them as best I could. And in fact, that's why the YouTube videos exist. Many times I would go in and I would give the answer, and then someone else would pile in and go, oh no, that's completely wrong, you don't do it like that. And what I ended up doing was actually pointing people to a video that I've made that showed them exactly how I did it that worked for me. And that was kind of how this YouTube thing for me all kind of kicked off. And a lot of people are worried about that when they're answering comments in places like forums, that you're going to spend 45 minutes typing in all the detail of how they can fix that problem, the things they need to test. And then someone will come along in the next comment and go, no, that's rubbish, don't do it that way, they don't know what they're talking about. I would say to everybody watching this, if you can help somebody in a forum, in something else, we were all in that situation once where we're starting out. In fact, I love it when I'm using something new where I have to go and figure things out. But if you can help somebody with your experience, just comment in, just give them a hand. You know, I had a question one the other day about the glues to use to put foamies together. And I put a comment up and had some fantastic interaction about what other people use. And it was really good. So in lots of cases, there aren't any wrong answers. There are lots of helpful answers around. So please, everybody out there, if you can help somebody in a comment, in YouTube or whatever, give them a little bit of help, pass it on. And then hopefully when they become proficient, they can pass it on in 2 or 3 years' time when they see someone else in the same situation struggling. And last thing to remember is opinions are exactly that. I have an opinion about lots of things, everybody does. Opinions are like belly buttons. Everyone has one. That's the clean version. The whole thing about opinion is just because I don't like the whole freestyle flying with quadcopters doesn't mean that that's not a valid way to fly, and that isn't something that I should help people with. Other pilots love that. I love flying FPV wings. I know other pilots who hate flying FPV wings. The hobby is huge, and part of that diversity is part of the fun, and why occasionally a show like this, for example, I'll bump into somebody that says, oh, have you ever tried this? It was really good. And I'll go, oh, no, I haven't. And I'll go back, maybe get one in, have a go with it, and it'll become my new love for the radio-controlled hobby. But that also means that occasionally you'll get asked questions or interact with people who don't have the same opinion as you, and that's absolutely fine. Just don't be rude about it if you're the questioner or the answerer. You know, just kind of recognize that that's the case, and if it's something you can't help with, then don't help. But if you can, please leave them some kind of comment or helpful post. So let me give you an example of the kind of question that I get on my YouTube videos on literally a daily basis. And it looks something like this. My motor will not run. What is problem? With lots and lots of question marks, usually an exclamation mark. It's very difficult for me to help with a question like that. That might be posted on a video about iNav, RD Pilot, it might be a quadcopter video, it might be a wing video. And often I'll find that the person asking the comment is not asking the comment about the product or build that they're actually leaving the comment on. So it might be that this is, say it's the existing series I'm doing right now, iNav on an F405 in a mini drag, and they leave that comment. And I go, okay, that's fine. I go back to them and say, so, you know, what is it you're building? What troubleshooting have you done? And I usually don't hear anything back at all, because that, I think, asking them what troubleshooting done and asking them for a little bit more detail just kind of blows their mind a little bit. And that's really sad, because I would love to help those people, but the challenge is that they haven't given me any information in that question for me to actually help them with. And without more detail, I can't answer them. It's like somebody coming up to you and saying, I tried to start my car this morning and I couldn't get it started. What's the problem? And you kind of, okay, well, it could be the battery's flat. Have you turned the key in the ignition? Did it start yesterday? Do the lights on the dash come on? Does it actually turn over but doesn't catch? There are a million extra things that you could ask that would start to narrow down which part of the car wasn't working. It's exactly the same. Let me give you another example of exactly the same question, but phrased in a much better way. So this is the same question posted potentially on any video, but says, I was given this quadcopter and it's my first one, but I'm stuck getting these motors to run. In beta flight 4.1, I can see bad RX in configurator, but the radio controls are working. What could be the problem? Thank you. Now that is an awful lot more use for somebody who's reading that. A lot of you who are reading that, watching this stream, are probably looking at it and thinking, okay, well, I can already think of about 3 or 4 things. The fact that we know we're looking at the quadcopter, the fact that we're looking at beta flight 4.1, the fact that the error message is in there helps narrow what the things to check could be down from literally hundreds to, you know, maybe a dozen or so. And when you get down to that kind of level, it's very easy to offer advice about what to go and have a look at. So let's just break down for a second what, by reading this question, we can infer from what that person's actually written. The first thing, of course, that we can infer right at the beginning, they talk about the fact that they've been given this quadcopter and it's their first one. So from answering the question point of view or asking the question point of view, you're letting that person who you want help from know that you are a newbie. And being a newbie is fine, but if you don't say that, then sometimes you can get an answer that is 3 or 4 levels above what you even understand. Similarly, if you're a really experienced pilot and you've been flying for 5 or 6 years and you have one specific problem with a KISS ESC, having the person come back to you and suggest some really, really basic things to test is going to be quite frustrating. And in fact, that occasionally happens to me. Somebody will leave a question and I'll give them the first steps of the troubleshooting because they haven't replied to my troubleshooting question. And they come back and they get a little bit shirty. And that is because I have no idea of their level of experience. If I'm talking to somebody like Jack, for example, who has built dozens and dozens of quadcopters and he rings me, I know immediately that, or I can assume fairly safely, that most of the basics have been covered. He'll have done a visual inspection, he'll have done continuity, he'll have maybe swapped out some components. So I can kind of talk to him about the detail. But if it's somebody at a show like the Mini Air Show 6 that we would have been at today, if it hadn't been virtual, if someone comes up and starts talking to me, then I also, if they explain they're brand new to it, I can kind of pull back on the 3 and 4 letter acronyms and talk in very much more simplistic terms to help them understand how all that goes together and give them ideas of how to tackle the problem and things to check. Next thing is I can't assume anything about the model. The model, unfortunately, has been gifted to them. So is it something they've bought, which came ready to rock and roll? Is it something that has been gifted? We can't assume anything about that model. until we know which one of those two it is. If it's a builder that knows what they're doing, it could be supplied ready to go. If it's a builder that's give it to them because they were trying to do it, their first build, they made a mess of it, then that person's potentially inherited a nasty problem. Maybe the power distribution board isn't happy. Nice thing for this is they're considerate and polite. It's a well thought out question. It's got the detail in it that I need to offer some decent reply. And it also says thank you at the end. It's amazing how often I'll spend time and effort answering people and they don't come back and say thank you. If they do, I always like that comment. That's a really nice thing to be able to do. Plus, if you say you kind of thank you and thank them at the end, then you can always go back and ask another question later on without them getting too grumpy. The other thing I can tell by this message is they've done a little bit of troubleshooting. I know that it's CleanFlight. I know that it's CleanFlight 4.1. I even know the error message. Knowing an error message means that they have connected it up to configurator, that they've tried to arm it in configurator, and they've done enough research, even though they're relatively new to all this, to find out what that bad RX means. And in fact, in this case, if they probably searched for bad RX Betaflight error code, they would probably be pointed to what the issue is, or be given a really good idea of where to start. And that's the big trick. Whenever you are putting a question together or you're asking for help in forums or wherever it is that you are, make sure that you're including those key kind of details. You kind of experience what it is, the versions of stuff you're using, the error codes, and also any troubleshooting that you've done. Doing it that way will allow the person or people that you're asking for help to come back with useful suggestions straight away rather than this toing and froing. So thank you for sticking with me for this first part of the Mini Airshow 6. Again, check out the rest of today's agenda. There's lots and lots of content throughout the day, and hopefully I'll see you all in person at Mini Airshow 7.